There's a moment in every one-sided love story that changes everything. It's quiet, uncelebrated, often overlooked even by the person living it. It's the moment you stop texting first, not out of spite, not because you want to punish anyone, but because you're tired. Tired of watching those three dots appear, then disappear. Tired of crafting warm, genuine messages that receive cold, dry replies. Tired of trying to keep a conversation alive when the silence on the other end is louder than any words you could send. You sit with your phone in your hand, thumb hovering over the keyboard. You think of something sweet, something thoughtful, something simple that might make them smile. But you don't send it. And it's not bitterness that holds you back. It's clarity. That quiet knowing in your chest, I've been the only one reaching for too long. And just like that, you realize love isn't supposed to feel like begging. It's not supposed to make you feel smaller the more you give. This isn't giving up. This is you giving back to yourself. Letting go in love often begins not with a big decision, but with a tiny one. Not texting first is that whisper of self-worth returning home. You don't slam the door on them. You just stop holding it open while they hesitate in the hallway. And the air feels different. A little colder maybe, a little quieter, but also a little more yours. Because silence isn't empty. Sometimes it's sacred. You begin to hear your own voice again. The voice that doesn't ask, "Why don't they want me?" but wonders instead, "Why have I been ignoring myself?" And that shift, however small, is monumental. It's the beginning of healing. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring for you. You used to shapeshift. Maybe you didn't even realize it at first. You laughed at jokes that didn't land. You softened your voice, your edges, your dreams, just to keep their comfort intact. You dimmed your brightness so they wouldn't feel outshined. You made yourself easier to love, more palatable, less too much, less you. And at first, it felt like connection, like compromise, like love even. But over time, it started to feel like vanishing. Because the more you tried to fit into their world, the more you disappeared from your own. You stopped listening to that quiet nudge inside the one that used to guide you. You stopped asking what you wanted and started only asking, will they still want me if? And the more you loved them, the less you recognized the person looking back at you. That's the part no one talks about when we glorify unconditional love. Because love isn't about dissolving. It's about expanding. Real love meets you where you are and invites your full self to the table. It doesn't ask you to shrink to fit. It doesn't silence your needs to preserve someone else's ease. So when you start to come back to yourself, when you begin to remember what you liked, what you needed, what made you feel alive, it might feel scary. You might think, what if they don't love me if I stop bending? But my love, if they only loved you when you were breaking yourself down to fit their comfort, that wasn't love. That was convenience. To love without losing yourself is the bravest kind of love. It says, I want connection, but not at the cost of who I am. So, you stop apologizing for needing more. You stop performing calm when you're actually anxious. You stop hiding the messy, tender parts of your soul that make you real. And one day, when the quiet is loud again, and your own heartbeat feels familiar, you'll whisper, I'm still here. And that will be the greatest reunion of all. There's a point in every collapsing relationship where your heart whispers, maybe if I just try harder. So you do. You stay up late waiting for their replies. You over-explain, overthink, overcompensate. You initiate every conversation plan. Every visit carry the emotional weight of two people hoping to keep something alive that's already slipping through your hands. You tell yourself, it's just a phase. They're just busy. They've got a lot going on. But deep down, you know, love isn't supposed to feel like a performance review. Like your value is being quietly assessed with every action. Like you're just one mistake away from being too much or not enough. Still, you try. You try to be easier, more forgiving, less reactive, less needy. You try to be someone they would stay for. But love that asks you to try this hard to be loved back isn't love. It's emotional starvation. It's you offering full meals to someone who never learned how to sit at the table and feed you too. And here's the part that hurts the most. You weren't wrong for loving them. You weren't wrong for trying. But you were wrong for thinking that your effort alone could save what two hearts were supposed to build together. Trying harder doesn't fix what's broken if you're the only one holding the glue. It doesn't make them see you clearer. It doesn't magically return the version of them you miss. Sometimes love fades. Sometimes people change. Sometimes they were never as in as you thought they were to begin with. But no matter the reason, your worth doesn't live in their willingness to stay. So when you stop trying so hard, it won't feel like winning. Not at first. It might feel like defeat, like letting go of your last thread of hope. But in time, it will feel like air returning to your lungs. It will feel like peace, because you'll finally understand you were never meant to exhaust yourself into being chosen. You were meant to love and be loved in return. You wrote it. Every word chosen with care, not too emotional, not too distant, just enough vulnerability to feel human, just enough restraint to protect your pride. You read it back twice. You imagined how they might react. You imagined the typing bubbles, the silence, the maybe not. Then slowly, you deleted it. Letter by letter, you let it go. No dramatic pause, no final send-off. Just an empty screen where your longing used to live. And in that quiet, something inside you softened. Because this wasn't just a message. It was your last attempt to reopen a door that never closed for both of you. It was your hope asking for one more chance. It was your heart whispering, "See me," one more time. But this time, you chose not to knock. You chose to walk away from the door and back toward yourself. There's a beauty in what's left unsent, a kind of sacred stillness that follows the decision not to chase clarity from someone who consistently gives you confusion. You begin to see that no message will bring back what was real. Because if it were truly real, you wouldn't have to beg for it to stay. And suddenly, your silence becomes a statement, not of apathy, but of self-awareness, not of bitterness, but of boundaries. It says, I wanted you to care, but not like this, not with me having to carry both of us across the finish line. The beauty of the unsent message is that it teaches you something powerful. Closure doesn't always come in the form of answers. Sometimes it comes when you stop asking. Sometimes it's found in the peace of not needing to know anymore. You put down your phone, breathe deep, and realize you're not waiting, not for a reply, not for their apology, not even for them to miss you. You're simply letting life speak louder than a message ever could. And in that silence, you finally hear yourself again. It started slowly, a little less eye contact, a few more delays in response. The warmth in their voice, once so natural, now sounded like it was being rationed. You noticed, you always do. But instead of confronting it, you waited, hoped it was just a phase, told yourself they were just tired, just busy, just distracted. But deep down, you felt the space growing. They were pulling away, not in a dramatic exit, but in the quiet erosion of presence. They were still there, but not really. Still texting, but shorter. Still around, but not arriving. And for the first time, you didn't chase. You didn't try harder. You didn't double your effort to stay relevant in their world. You just stayed still. It wasn't out of pride. It was out of wisdom. The kind that only comes from loving deeply and losing yourself once too often. You had learned that love built on pursuit, on trying to fill the silence before it deepened, was love rooted in fear. And you were tired of being afraid. Afraid of being left. Afraid of being forgotten. Afraid that if you didn't stretch yourself thin enough, you wouldn't be worth staying for. But standing still, that was new. It was brave. It said, if you're meant to stay, you will. And if you're meant to go, I won't hold the door shut. Letting someone pull away without following them, it breaks something open inside you. Not your heart, but your illusion. The illusion that love must be earned with endless effort. That your place in someone's life is dependent on how quiet you can keep your needs. That you must always be the glue. But glue doesn't work when the other half keeps peeling away. So you stayed still. And in that stillness, something sacred happened. You saw yourself again, not as someone they were drifting from, but as someone worth staying with, even if they couldn't see it. They don't tell you this, but sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone go. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving them differently. More selflessly, more honestly, more quietly. It's the kind of love that whispers, I see you changing. And I won't ask you to stay the same for me, because holding someone who no longer feels held by the connection, it's not love, it's possession. And that's never what your heart wanted. There comes a point when you realize that clinging doesn't make the love deeper. It just makes the pain last longer. So instead of pleading, instead of rewriting yourself again to keep them close, you open your hands. You say with grace, if you need to go, go. Not as a threat, not as a test, but as an offering. Because real love doesn't lock the door. It doesn't trap. It doesn't beg. It loves fully, completely, and then it releases. And it hurts. God, it hurts. Because this kind of letting go isn't cold. It's warm and trembling and soaked in everything unspoken. It's a goodbye made of love that still exists, but knows it's no longer enough to stay. People often mistake letting go as giving up, but it's not. It's showing up in the most courageous way, by stepping aside when you're no longer their path, by honoring their journey, even if it no longer includes you. And in doing so, you reclaim your own journey too. You say yes to your healing, yes to your wholeness, yes to the truth that love doesn't have to be held to be real. It can be released and still have meaning. Letting go is not forgetting. It's remembering what you deserve. and gently reminding them what they're free to choose. At first, the silence was deafening. It wasn't just the absence of their voice. It was the absence of routine, of good mornings, of shared laughter, of the little digital footprints that once traced their presence in your life. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Your phone felt heavier than usual, not because of the notifications, but because of the ones that never came. You sat with that ache in your chest, wondering if the silence was punishment or just proof that they'd truly moved on. But something unexpected happened. The silence stopped echoing with their absence and started whispering your presence. You began hearing the soft hum of your own being again, the music you used to play for yourself, the thoughts that no longer needed translation, the moments of peace that weren't interrupted by expectation. You started waking up and checking in with your own heart first, not your messages. You began taking walks where the destination didn't matter. You smiled at strangers again, not to impress, but simply to feel human. The silence once so sharp began to feel like a warm bath, a place to soak in your solitude, a space where nothing was demanded of you. No explanations, no performances, just breath and being. Healing often doesn't arrive in the thunder of closure, but in the hush of solitude. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It just arrives in small sacred ways. You realize you went a whole afternoon without thinking of them. You catch yourself laughing genuinely at something simple. You stop checking their status. You stop writing mental letters. You stop waiting. Not because you forced yourself to, but because your soul has slowly begun to unclench. The silence that once hurt you has started to hold you. And you're learning that quiet doesn't always mean lonely. Sometimes it means you've finally come home to yourself. You kept showing up, pouring your heart in drop by drop, hoping maybe this time something would bloom again. But nothing did. And deep down, you knew you were watering a dead plant. The leaves hadn't just wilted, they had turned brittle, brown, gone. The soil hadn't felt their roots in weeks. The sun no longer reached them. And yet you kept coming back with your watering can of effort, hope, and denial. Because love had taught you persistence. Because your heart didn't know how to walk away from something it once called home. But here's the truth no one told you. No amount of water will revive what has already chosen to die. No amount of messages, chances, or patience will bring back someone who has emotionally left the garden. And every time you give more to what no longer grows, you empty yourself. You offer sunlight to someone who's already built a roof. You try to breathe life into something that's asking to be let go. It's not love anymore, it's survival. And you deserve more than to survive in a place where love should have helped you thrive. There's a gentle kind of grief in realizing this. You might feel guilt, like you gave up too soon. Like maybe if you had just tried harder, loved louder, waited longer. But love isn't CPR. It's not meant to be resuscitated over and over while it gasps for breath and refuses to return. Love is alive. It grows, stretches, bends. It doesn't hide in the shadows of maybes and someday. So when it stops growing, when the plant no longer responds, you are allowed to stop watering. Not out of resentment, but out of mercy. You can let it go. Let it be. And take your water, your time, your care, your devotion to a space ready to receive it. Because somewhere out there, something is still alive, and it's waiting for you to bloom with it. You stood there wide open, heart exposed, holding every soft part of yourself out in offering, not because you were weak, but because you believed love should be honest, unfiltered, real. And you hoped, prayed, even that they would see it, that they would see you. But they didn't. Not really. They saw the version of you that was easy, the parts that entertained, the surface, the smile. They never looked deep enough to witness the storms you survived, the poetry in your silence, the fire in your stillness. And still you stayed. You waited to be chosen. As if love was a crown they might one day place on your head. But let's say it clearly now. You were never meant to be chosen by someone who couldn't even see you. You were never meant to shrink yourself into someone's limited vision, to twist your truth just to fit inside their comfort, to wait in the corner of their life hoping they'd turn around. Because love is not a favor. It's not a charity. It's not something you audition for. It's a recognition, a resonance, a meeting of eyes, of souls, of truths. And anyone who has to squint to see your worth isn't worthy of it. This realization, it's painful. It breaks the dream, burns the letters you never sent, dissolves the hope you held like a secret. But it also sets you free, because now you stop knocking on the wrong doors. You stop whispering, "Pick me," in places where your name was never meant to echo. You stand up, dust off the ache, and walk away not empty, but restored. You were never invisible. They were just unwilling. And their blindness, that was never your burden to fix. You are not waiting to be seen anymore. You are learning to see yourself and to never again settle for someone who looks past you. You thought you needed it. The long message, the heartfelt apology, the final conversation where everything finally made sense. You rehearsed it in your head. What you'd say, what they might admit, how you'd finally understand why they let go, why they changed, why it ended. Closure felt like a finish line, something that would allow your heart to rest, to file it all under resolved and move on cleanly. But that moment never came. They walked away quietly, or messily, or without the decency of goodbye at all. And for a long time you stayed in your mind, in your grief, in the space where their words should have been. Until one day, you stopped waiting. Not because you stopped caring, but because you realized their explanation couldn't heal what they broke. Their insight wouldn't undo the nights you cried alone. Their reasons wouldn't soften the ache of being left with unanswered questions. So you stopped needing closure, not because you received it, but because you no longer wanted to trade your peace for their presence. You began to understand something deeper. Closure isn't given. It's claimed. It's not a gift they owe you. It's a boundary you create. It's a choice to stop spinning the story and start writing a new one. So you breathed. You deleted the unsent message. You let the silence be the answer. You let the missing pieces stay missing. And in that space, you came home to yourself again. The ache didn't vanish, but it no longer controlled you. You could walk past the memories without stopping. You could say their name in your head without pain. You could remember without reaching. And that is closure. Not the wrapping up of loose ends, but the unraveling of the need to tie them. Because you're not waiting anymore. Not for them. Not for answers. Not for a perfect goodbye. You've made peace with not knowing. And in that quiet, you finally found everything you were looking for.